Today we'll be playing the urbanization game. As you're aware, industrialization will radically change the landscape, both literally and figuratively, of industrializing and later industrialized nations. As I read the backdrop for the village that we will be transforming into a city over the course of this game, please follow the instructions on the screen and work on those instructions while also listening as I read the description of the village that you are creating. The year is 1700. Life here in our rural English village is similar to other villages throughout Europe in the 18th century. Change traditionally comes very slowly. People moved at a much slower pace and had access to very little information about the world outside their village. London, England's largest city and one of the two real cities in Europe, had a population of about 750,000 in 1750. 3 out of every 4 Englishmen were rural and lived in small villages like this one. The average village was inhabited by about 200 to 400 people. The tallest structure in a village was the church. The religion of England, by now, is the Anglican Church, also known as the Church of England. Home life and work life were very closely integrated, as most work was done in nearby fields or in the home or perhaps adjoining workshop. The family was an economical unit as well as a social unit. Every member of the family worked very hard from sunup to sundown. Even small children had chores. The homes of villagers were very small, with earthen floors and inadequate lighting and ventilation. All members of the family slept in the same room and sometimes shared living quarters with the livestock. Sons worked with their fathers farming and tending livestock, while daughters worked with their mothers cleaning, cooking, sewing, and at other domestic chores. Life expectancy was slightly over 40 years of age. Most people married in their teens and had babies before they were 20. It was common for women to die during childbirth, so the average marriage lasted about 15 years. Stepmothers and stepfathers were common. 1 baby out of 3 died before their first birthday. Only 1 child out of every 2 saw their 21st birthday. Unlike France, the English were not rigidly divided into social or legal estates. However, there was a distinct social class system. Most English were poor farmers. A few were middle class, like the bourgeoisie of France. They lived for the most part in London. Still, a small few were aristocrats and usually owned large tracts of land in the English countryside. For both peasant and aristocrats, the soil was the key to the economy. Land was the source of livelihood and well-being. Having enough land to produce adequate food, or to produce enough to sell or even to rent, was the key to economic survival. Traditions concerning land guided daily living. These traditions were designed to ensure the stability and welfare of the greater community. Hence, marriages and inheritance were geared towards maintaining family property, keeping it intact. Marriages were always arranged by parents to maintain or better the economic status of their sons or daughters. Not all could get married, however. A man had to generally own land on which to support a family before he dared to marry. It was not uncommon for men to wait until their 30s when they inherited property from their parents, which enabled them to marry. If a woman did not bring land into marriage, she had to have some kind of dowry. Daughters who inherited property from their parents had to pass it on to their husbands. All land was given to the eldest son in a practice known as primogeniture. Primo, prime, the first. Geniture, generation. Primogeniture. All land was given to the eldest son, while younger sons might receive cash payments or wait for their older brother to die. The main occupation of England was farming. Private and public lands were not separated by fences as they are today. Every village had a public area known as the commons. This land was land which was available to anyone for pasturing, hunting, gathering of firewood, growing crops, etc. So, poor farmers who did not own their own land, or rent it, could eke out a marginal living by depending on the commons. Unlike France, most English peasants or farmers did own their own land, however small that amount might be. Villages were connected by a system of dirt roads that became almost impassable during the wet season. As a result, transportation was often slow and trade beyond the village was not easy. Most English farmers never visited any place farther than 25 miles from their birthplace in their entire lives. People made their own food, clothes, furniture, tools, and homes. A few items which could not be produced could be obtained from wandering peddlers who brought with them not only goods but news. Finally, for fuel, there were two sources: firewood and coal. Nearly every English village had a coal mining operation. These mines employed a small number of village dwellers, especially in the winter. Coal pits from which coal was extracted belonged to the owner of the property where the coal mine was situated. Over the next 100 years, a revolution as significant as the Neolithic Revolution, when early man turned from hunting and gathering to agriculture, will completely change life in your village. Some historians believe this revolution, the Industrial Revolution, is the most fundamental change in human history. We will experience some of these changes over the course of the next several rounds of this game. Feel free to pause the video here to give students additional time to set up their boards if necessary. Please note, as we progress through this game, you are not allowed to remove trees, erasing them to make way for other buildings, until you are explicitly told you may begin doing that as part of the game as the rounds progress. Round 1, 1745. As you can see, already listed on the screen is what you will need to be drawing as I read the script. It is now 1745. England's geography is unique in that no section of the country is more than 90 miles from the sea, and there are many navigable rivers that crisscross the countryside. An enterprising young capitalist, you, decides to invest money in the construction of a canal. This is not a public venture, but rather a private one. The profits from your canal are astonishing. For example, one canal built in 1745, the Oxford Canal, yielded a 300% annual return for its investors for a period of more than 30 years. This new revolution in transportation reduced the price of raw materials and reduced the cost of transportation drastically. Coal could now be transported from the mines to the towns for half the price of the horse-drawn wagon transportation. Since you invested your money, thereby making a tidy profit, build yourself one nice home anywhere on the map that you would like it to be. Don't forget to construct the canal, the man-made waterway. It must run parallel to the river. All right, we will move on to round 2. 1750. For a variety of different reasons, soap, diet, sanitation, etc., there is a population explosion in England and in your village. The cursed bubonic plague, which for centuries ravaged your village, has been virtually eliminated due to the disposal of sewage in the canals and then ultimately the ocean. Add 5 houses for a total of 15 houses now on your map. All right, round 3. As a reminder, you do not need to wait for me to instruct you to draw what is on the screen. You may begin as soon as the new round starts. So, round 3, 1760. The people of your village need a bit more food and goods to meet the needs of the new inhabitants. Coincidentally, a number of other noteworthy events occur around 1760. First, a number of new mechanical inventions for farming are developed. Perhaps the greatest impact was Jethro Tull's creation of the seed drill and the horse-drawn cultivator. Also, farmers begin to experiment with new, more productive farming practices like crop rotation, new fertilizers, new livestock breeding techniques, etc. Consequently, farm production is significantly increased, but there is one problem. Most farmers own only one tract of land. Why should they, or how could they, invest in expensive machines when their land is so small? What's more, it's almost impossible to buy land from anyone. At the same time, pressure is placed on Parliament by large and small landowning farmers to make more land available. Where is this land coming from? The Commons, of course. A series of laws called the Enclosure Acts, available on your screen, are passed by Parliament. This means that landowners can buy pieces of common land from the government. Fence off an area 3 by 3 inches to be reserved as a commons. Add 5 houses for a total of 20 and 1 more nice house. Round 4. It's 1773. A man named Richard Arkwright invents a new machine that can spin and weave cloth 100 times faster than could be done by hand in a farm cottage, the most common way of producing cotton cloth up till this time, the cottage industry. He calls this new machine the water frame because its principal source of power was water. Let's imagine that the first water frame was built in your village because of the river. Since the water frame was large, a special building was needed, and thus the first factory for producing cotton cloth was built. Add 1 factory, no smoke. It is powered by water. Remember, the cotton factory must be placed on the riverbank. Canal water is not swift enough to generate the power to work the parts of the water frame. Don't add any smoke to this factory. Add an additional 5 houses for workers for a total of 25. Round 5. It is now 1774. Workers are needed to work in this new factory. Since many people, women, cannot compete with the spinning and weaving of cloth made in the factory, and there are large numbers of poor families who have lost their livelihood due to the Enclosure Acts, we do have an available supply of workers. People move to your village to find work. Add 15 houses for a total of 40, 1 church, 1 pub, and 1 store. You may draw additional roads and 1 additional bridge if you choose to do so. All right. Round 6, 1777. The profits from the first textile factory are enormous. It should be no surprise that Richard Arkwright is referred to with 2 titles, the father of the factory and the first millionaire. New factories are built in your community. Add 5 new factories. They all must be on the riverbank as they need water power. The early owners of these factories called themselves capitalists because they had the capital, or money, to purchase the raw material, the building, the water frame, and to pay their workers a fixed wage to make a profit. Add 5 houses for a total of 45. Remember, none of these factories should have smoke. They are still running on water power. Okay. Round 7. It is 1780. Unemployed workers from surrounding areas flood into your community looking for work. Although wages are very low, they look attractive to starving families. Housing is in great demand, and for the first time a new kind of housing is constructed called tenements. Here, dozens of families reside under one roof. Tenements are cramped living conditions. You will have one family, sometimes with 12 family members, living in perhaps just one small room. Toilet facilities, if there are any, are shared amongst a floor, sometimes amongst 2 floors worth of individuals. These tenements are cheaper than renting a full house. Draw 5 tenements. Round 8. It is now 1781. More workers need to live, eat, shop, drink, and worship. We need the social support services to go along with the demand. Add one store, one pub, one church, and one school for those families wealthy enough to send their children, their sons, to school. Since workers in the factories work 6 days a week, the only day of rest is Sunday. People flock to your churches, so make them convenient for their tired feet. Round 9. It is now 1782. Workers work long, hard hours in the factories. The average workday begins at 6 a.m. and ends at 9 p.m. There is only a 30-minute break for lunch. After work, exhausted, stressed out workers stop at their local pub for some relaxation. Alcohol begins to be consumed throughout England in record amounts. Add 5 more pubs. Destroy 5 houses and add 4 tenements. Round 10. It is 1783. Workers barely eke out a marginal existence. There is never enough money to save, and some workers go into debt. Few, if any, could afford to send their children to school. Still, there are a few families whose lifestyle is quite comfortable, even luxurious. Who are they? They are the large landowning farmers and factory owners. Add 2 special homes. Handsome manor houses are built, and some are lavishly furnished with art. These new rich, or the nouveau riche, are not part of the aristocratic class of England, but they now can enjoy some of the refinements of the aristocratic rich, such as food, servants, furniture, education, fine clothing, carriages, etc. The British East India Company is expanding to furnish these factories with the increased demand for raw materials. Add 1 factory and 15 houses for management personnel, a total of 55 houses. At this point and going forward, if you need to remove trees to make space for the required building projects, you may do so. Round 11, 1785. A man named James Watt invents a new machine called the steam engine, or rather is credited with inventing the machine called the steam engine. The steam engine replaces the water frame. First, it is far more efficient. Second, it allows factories to be built away from the river. This source of power is more mobile. Capitalists quickly replace their water frames with steam-powered weaving and spinning machines. The main business in England is still textile manufacturing. Add 10 factories with smoke. Additionally, add smoke to all other pre-existing factories. And add 1 nice house, since people continue to get rich, and 5 houses for a total of 60, and 1 tenement. Round 12, 1800. A man named Henry Court has just invented the puddling process. This process makes it possible for coal, which is fortunately in abundant supply in England, to be used as the primary fuel in the new iron industry, enabling the creation of stronger wrought iron thanks to these innovations, which can then help construct larger factories as well as eventually train lines. Consequently, your town is thrust into the new age of heavy industry. Larger factory districts appear, which manufacture iron at low prices and that can easily be transported by your canal. Add 1 new coal mine, a new iron bridge to replace the wooden one, and 5 houses, totaling 65 houses on your board. Round 13. The year is 1815. Coal miners are busy mining coal. There is great demand for coal right now. Home heating, fuel for the steam engines, for the production of iron, etc. Add another coal mine. Although in the 1700s coal miners were adults who worked in the winter to supplement their wages, in the 1800s they are typically children between the ages of 8 and 14. The work is dangerous and unhealthy. Children become victims of black lung, coal dust coating the insides of their lungs, turning them black, making it difficult to breathe, reducing the plasticity of the lung, and resulting in early death. They are also victims of explosions and accidents at the mines. Their growth is stunted as they spend their 14-hour day stooped over in the small mine shafts. They are malnourished and unable to exercise or eat properly. Casualty rates go up. Draw 1 cemetery. Round 14. It is 1820. The existing canals and dirt roads cannot accommodate the heavy industrial traffic. New experiments with transportation using the power of a steam engine are tried. The most successful appears to be a steam engine that pulls a series of wagons or cars on an iron track. The first railroad is tested and proves to be quite effective. Add 1 major railroad line connecting all your factories to your coal mines. This is 1 continuous track which must connect all factories and mines. You may build additional railroad bridges only as needed. Additionally, add 5 houses for your railroad workers. Also, during this period, advances in purified gas have led to the creation of street lamps. So, your city streets are no longer as dark at night. You do not need to draw any street lamps. Round 15, 1827. This new revolution in transportation draws thousands of people to your community. Soon there becomes a surplus of workers. Capitalists who wish to ensure their profits decide to hire women and children over men because they can perform the same factory labor at 1/2 to 1/4 the price. More and more children leave their homes to work. Depressed, ashamed, and angry about their wives and children toiling in factories, many men turned to crime and the social life of the pub. For the first time in England's history, alcoholism appears in epidemic proportions. Family life that existed for hundreds of years in England is disrupted. Family members seldom eat together or even see each other. Add 1 jail, 2 pubs, and 2 tenements. Round 16. It is 1838. Let's look at the working conditions in the factories. The 2 predominant factories are textile and iron, steel. Working conditions in either of these 2 were appalling. Many workers contract the deadly factory fever or white lung disease. It was probably a variety of lung ailments, cancer, tuberculosis, emphysema, etc. Breathing in textile fibrils and or steel, metallic parts that are in the air with no proper ventilation in any of these factories. Hours and hours on end. Other workers were injured on the job in factory accidents. There were no protective railings around the huge moving mechanical parts of machinery. Children, weakened from lack of proper sleep or diet, stumbled into the machinery and were mutilated. Women with their long hair that became undone often found themselves caught in moving machinery. Regardless, if you were unable to work, you were fired. There was no health insurance. There was no unemployment insurance. There were always a daily line of unemployed workers waiting to fill vacant jobs. Add 2 hospitals and 1 more cemetery. Round 17. It is 1840. There is a need for quicker transportation. Coal, iron, finished products, and raw materials must all be transported from one area of England to another. In Ireland, in the late 1830s, a devastating potato famine drove hundreds of thousands of Irish to England. Here was the cheapest of labor possible to build more railroads. Add 1 more railroad line passing east to west through your town. Add 5 houses and 1 tenement for the new railroad workers. Round 18. It is 1842. There are some advantages to urban dwellers. City life is very different from the country life. For the small but growing middle classes, a whole new cultural life is available. Museums, theater, opera, restaurants, plays, and concerts are made available. Whereas before only the aristocrats could afford the arts, now the middle class enjoys the fine life of culture and good living. Add 1 theater and 1 museum. Add 2 private schools for upper-class students. Mark these schools with a P. Add 1 nice house. Additionally, people from outside the industrialized world are starting to peak, their interest is starting to be piqued. Your village hosts a visitor from German Saxony, here to study the industrial designs and railroads to bring this new engineering knowledge back to Germany, which will soon begin the industrialization journey of its own. Round 19. It is 1845. There are no pollution controls, so the air in your community looks dark. Windows, walls, even trees are covered with layers of soot and coke. The river that once flowed through your quiet village for hundreds of years is now unfit for drinking, bathing, or even laundry. A new disease begins to take the lives of people. Malignant tumors grow in people's bodies, and the term cancer is first used in the medical profession. The average life expectancy for the poor classes is now 30 years of age, a decrease of an average of 10 years. Your city is overcrowded and shrouded in factory smoke. The noises, the loss of privacy, the loss of the family unit shatters the peace of the old ways. Suicide rates double, then triple. Add 1 cemetery, 1 jail, and 1 hospital to accommodate the victims of urban life. Round 20. It is 1850. By this year, several million acres of good English land has been enclosed and sold to private parties who own large estates. Despite the misery this creates for England's landless poor, the economic benefits for the rich are obvious. These farmers purchase the newest power-driven machinery and can easily feed the working class of England, including the Irish. The small landowning farmer is crushed by the enclosed commons. They cannot afford the machinery and therefore cannot compete and grow food profitably. Thousands of these folk leave their villages, where their ancestors had lived for hundreds of years, and move to towns and cities looking for work to feed their families. Some refused to leave, but took jobs working for the large landowning farmers. By the thousands, they moved to the bleak, uninviting towns of the north and the new cotton mills. Add 20 houses, 5 tenements, 2 stores, 1 church, 5 factories, 1 pub, 2 more nice houses, and 1 special house. This same year, Queen Victoria opens the Grand Exhibition at the Crystal Palace, showing lots of new technology and what looks to be a sparkling mechanical future. The discordance with the daily life of the working class in England could not be more stark. 10 years later, the Bessemer process is created, which is able to produce high-grade steel, changing machines and transportation. Additionally, the telegraph is invented, which enables people to send messages across long distances in mere hours instead of weeks. 10 years after that, you are host to a delegation from Japan, where you have Japanese officials touring industrialized areas, learning what it means to be industrial, how to create these factory machines so they can replicate this for their people on their home islands of Japan. At the same time, ports have never been busier on your English Isles, where raw materials are being trucked in at ever-increasing rates to meet the factory demands, and trucking out again factory mass-produced goods to sell the world over. They are now using iron steamships rather than sailboats. The age of sail is well behind us. The game has now concluded. You will now have time to discuss these reflection questions with those around you.